it's the loudest culture can win, but if it's not done intentionally, you kind of miss the best of both. There's also tremendous, and this is going to be a strong word early on in this conversation, but grief. Nick and I were talking about identity.
The fact that I have to be the one that flew out there to some cow field in the middle of Bowmankirk, Germany in the Black Forest and tell these people everything you have done is amazing. It really is, but it doesn't scale to a $500 million company.
I think majority of the companies do a good job of vision and strategy and why they want to buy this company, how this is going to increase the revenue, and how the cost synergies are going to work. So everything looks great on paper, but majority of the folks don't know how to execute on that.
Level of transparency and frankly, courage, right? There's not a lot of courage. Don't bait and switch the company you're acquiring. That's the fundamental thing.
Well, I love that when you said false pride, because I would say it's not false. I mean,
right. Real pride.
It's actual pride, and rightfully so. You've achieved something, you put your heart and mind. I remember.
We do have 3 great panelists today, and I think you know them all now. I think a lot of people here know Lisa Clark. Let me do just a brief introduction of the 3, and feel free to add more to your story as we start, okay? So Lisa, as many of you know, the CEO of Pacific Catapult. She has a lot of PE experience, a lot of experience in business transformation. She guides CEOs and boards to elevated results. I love that phrase. She's worked at Quantum, Rally Marketing Group. She was the managing director of E78 Partners. And the first time I talked to her on the phone, I was just amazed with her amount of depth of experience on all the topics of integration. So thank you for being here, Lisa. Glad to have you. Dr. Pamela Matson. She calls herself a cultural strategist and executive coach. And the same thing about Pamela, just amazing experience. And especially from the people and the culture side, she is so deep in that experience. And so I think we're going to hear a lot from Pamela. She has worked at Amazon. She was a global head at Amazon. She has worked at a startup called Outreach, and now she owns her own company. So thank you, Pamela, for being here.
Great to be here. And
we also have Dr. Dee Sangeeta. She is currently the CEO of Gotara, and she's got a wealth of experience as a C-suite leader at GE Aircraft, Nielsen, where I met her. I had the fortunate ability to be in her team. And she also worked at Amazon before she started Gotara. And Gotara has been around for 5 years. She is the CEO and taken us through many pivots in the market to where we are today. So thank you, Sangeeta, as well. Anything else you want to introduce yourself? Did I miss anything important?
We'll get to it along the way.
Okay. Sure. All right. Very good.
Did you introduce yourself?
I didn't. I am Dana Ginn. I am the COO at Gotara. I have experience in petrochemical industries. I have experience doing innovation and strategy consulting. I've taught at universities, and I met Sangeeta again at Nielsen. So I'm so happy to be back with her at Gotara.
Thanks, Dana.
All right. I have some questions I'm going to pose to the panel, and it'll be a nice, lively discussion. I do want questions from the group as well. So feel free at any time, raise your hand, pop up. We're going to take questions as well. All right. Bonnie, are we all set? I am going to start with Lisa. We've done a lot of research on integrations because we are now also doing post-M&A integration work with some of our customers. And our research shows that 80% of post-M&A integrations fail. And I think it might even be higher than that. But Lisa, for you, why is that?
I think it's important to sort of frame it with the context of the integration, because it's hard to say integration and just have that be kind of this monolithic thing that applies to all companies. So I really think about it in kind of 3 key areas. So I happen to start out in a mid-market public company. So you can have a company like the one that I was a part of, where it was highly acquisitive, had just done a secondary offering, was buying up a bunch of companies, and we integrated them. You could also have a private equity platform, which is very common, right? And I think a lot of people in this room, that resonates with you, where there's a platform or an idea of a platform and you're acquiring companies and putting them into that platform. And then there's your kind of founder-led, closely held private company that might be doing its first or second acquisition, and they're not really thinking platform, they're thinking this is strategic. So with that kind of foundation, I think that what you said about most of them failing is pretty uniform across all of those. I don't think there's really any distinction there. Why? Based on my experience, because I happen to have experience in all three of those, I think number one would be not having operational alignment and not having a common understanding of what's going to happen post-close. Despite best intentions and lots of conversations, there tends to be a lot of operational disconnects, which we can talk about when we get into more specificity. And the second thing would be not having a qualified, experienced team that also has the bandwidth to execute on the integration well. Those are the two things that I see.
Okay. I want to open it up to the other two, but I have a question for you. So the integration team, should these be people pulled out full-time of their current roles and designated as an integration team? Or is it, I'm doing this and I'm still doing my regular role?
So I think this is where there is a distinction among those three types, right? If you're in a public company that's mid-market, like the one that I was a part of, right? We were full of people with lots of experience in the various functional areas. We also had depth, like I had 6 lieutenants and ran the operations, right? So I could elevate into a role which was integrating acquisitions. And then we did leverage outside consultants, and on the acquiring side, I would identify people within those acquiring organizations who had both the expertise and bandwidth to be pulled into the integration team. So that's a hybrid approach, but I think the pure approach tends to fail more often, which is where you either say, we don't know anything about this, we're going to hire the consultants, and then we're going to just let the consultants do it. And that makes it tough for the consultants because they don't have their champion inside who they're partnering with. And I'm looking at Nick here, who probably has seen this. And then the other thing would be to say, we're just going to take all the people from our company and we are the integration team and we're going to call them the integration team for this platform. And you pull from various areas and you hodgepodge together a group that integrates all these different companies into your private equity platform. And frankly, I have seen that not work that well either. I happen to be part of an acquisition that happened in 2021 where it was a platform. And we were acquisition number 8, and an acquisition number 14, we bought a company that only did integrations. And my perspective was we should have bought those people before, right? So there you go.
Okay. All right. Sangeeta and Pamela, how about why organizations fail when they're doing these integrations?
I come from the culture side. So I think there's a huge underestimated impact of integrating cultures or not doing that intentionally. It's the loudest culture can win, but if it's not done intentionally, you kind of miss the best of both. There's also tremendous, this is gonna be a strong word early on in this conversation, but grief. Nick and I were talking about identity, but the leaders that were founders and they were the top dog in their organization and went to build it, and then they get acquired by a large organization, say Amazon, for example, and did a lot of those integrations. It's a huge transition. So the acquisition is a financial one, it's a big win, there's lots to celebrate, but it's also a psychological one. Yeah. So I think you can underestimate the psychological impact of integrating cultures for key leaders that are critical to that transition, and for the people. Do I still have a story here? Do I still fit here? What does this mean for my career?
I'm going to love to get into this in more detail as we go forward. Sangeeta.
I think Lisa and Pamela have covered a lot. The only thing that I would add is I think majority of the companies do a good job of vision and strategy and why they want to buy this company, how this is going to increase the revenue, and how the cost synergies are going to work. So everything looks great on paper. but majority of the folks don't know how to execute on that. They can't take a business development model. And the thing is, business development model may be a little too optimistic also, because BD people want to show how great the companies can be, but the execution piece is just absolutely missing in most cases. And that's where a lot of the stuff that they talked about. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's flip the coin. Successes, successful post-M&A integrations you've been involved with, you've seen. What makes them successful? And Pamela, if I could start with you.
Again, I'm going to come from that angle of culture,
Yep.
But the intentional integration of culture. I think that Amazon especially learned that the investment in an organization to take them along, give that support system for the reduction in confidence and competence that happens when you're in a brand new system, and that level of scale and complexity. So for me, I would say the ones that I've seen done really, really well is some of the care and surrounding of the core team, and then making sure that the right people are around them to advise on what's going to stay, what's not going to stay, and to be really, really honest and transparent about that.
Okay. Can I dive in just a little bit there? So the ones who do it well do that cultural alignment really well. And you said they support the core team. Can you tell me what that looks like? Give me a little bit more detail.
So there's lots of due diligence before the acquisition.
Yeah.
So once the acquisition happens, it's about what are the key roles that are going to stay, what's going to change, and making sure that the people are very aware of where they fit into this new story.
As soon as possible.
As soon as
in
possible.
the journey.
And then there's some critical things, like I'm thinking about a major acquisition that Amazon did. Amazon's culture is very, very pervasive, very strong. There's leadership principles, there's expectations, there's a way of working. There's also some critical things about this acquisition that make the heartbeat, and it's critical. So the negotiation of saying we're not willing to compromise on a leadership principle, we're not willing to compromise on a way of working that's made us attractive to be acquired. We need to have that conversation. And that's not often the one that's on the table.
And do you have that conversation in due diligence immediately after the deal is closed? When do you have the conversation?
This one was missed. So this
was
one
missed
actually
completely.
happened, but
Okay.
it was a huge success because they came to the table and they were unwilling to compromise.
Okay.
Like this, if you
Yeah.
pull this linchpin out, much of what you've acquired will not stay.
Okay.
So we can build bridges around it to course correct the next 18 months to 2 years, but do not pull this now. And it may seem small, but it was a huge, huge thing.
And
for
that was
this
the
team.
acquired company
Yes.
saying, this is core to what we
It's
do
core
and
to
why
who
you
we
bought
are.
us.
Yes.
Don't. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Other success stories. Lisa?
Well, I would say I was just thinking about one that we did, and this was probably 18, 20 years ago, but it was a global business, and we were acquiring a company in Adelaide, Australia, Stuttgart, Germany, and Inglewood, Colorado.
Oh.
And these were all three different companies, and they were kind of going on simultaneously. But the idea was that we were going to put everybody on Oracle, right, from a system. And I think the reason that could have failed but was successful was because initially when all the, going out and taking everyone to dinner and talking about how great this was going to be 1 + 1 = 3 kind of stuff, I think there was a lot of talk about, oh, hi team in Germany. Yeah, your call center is great. You guys are so great. We love everything you're doing. But they didn't tell them, like, listen, this thing is probably going to go away.
Exactly.
And the fact that I have to be the one that flew out there to some cow field in the middle of Bowmankirk, Germany in the Black Forest and tell these people, everything you have done is amazing. It really is, but it doesn't scale to a $500 million company. And they were furious, but it was much better to have them furious then, pre-close, and clear that they were going to be integrated into this thing. And it was successful. And not just because of that, but if that had not happened, that operational disconnect would have been very difficult for me to implement that system. And because it was going to be me owning that, I was very vested in making sure I didn't have all these people screaming and getting, demotivated by it. So it's tricky because those can be deal risks, right? They could say no, this is our whole world and we don't want to do this deal because of this one thing, but I thought highly unlikely. So we're going to take this risk and do it. And that integration that time, those sets of integrations were successful. And it was because of not just that, but things like that our integration team did that was very clear, was very honest, and in the spirit of working together, not being confrontational. But it was difficult. And I think a lot of absence of doing the difficult thing and trying to be very honeymoony-like will bite you in the end. And so those were successful, I think, because of that level of transparency and, frankly, courage, right? There's not a lot of courage. Don't bait and switch the company you're acquiring. That's the fundamental thing. If you don't do that, you will be much more equipped to have a successful integration.
Yeah. And just to pull that thread, sometimes it's not a bait and switch. Like sometimes it's the business has changed or the market has changed or expectations have changed. And so when you acquire a company and you take all 30 of their employees because you want their technology platform as to expand your platform, this is a generative AI company, the market changed 2023.
That's a great example.
Guess what? There's like, it's like we were growing at all costs, like whatever, just growth. That was the measure. Investors were saying, how fast are you growing? How many people do you have? Great. You're at 1,200. Awesome. Then, oh, by the way, we are actually no longer interested in growth. We want your path to profitability. Well, it was not a nefarious thing,
right?
But we acquired all 30 people. There should be a conversation of saying we can't guarantee jobs for everyone forever.
Right.
Like we just need to be super honest. But they weren't looking ahead. They weren't looking around corners. The market changed. Platform stayed. It was a great acquisition. Expanded the company. And then we had to lay off some of that team. And that happens.
It's I think it's a great example that every time a situation can be different. And the example that I have is also from the past. My GE experience, this was a company which was about $120 million. We are integrating into GE Aviation. And being a large company, we actually had dedicated a integration team. So I was the team leader. I was the integration leader. I had all functions and leaders. So that we created this team a month before or 2 months before the real acquisition. And that helped us get ready. So the key things that made this business successful or integration successful, and by the way, it's still there today in GE, so it was successful. I think two things what we realized, and I learned a lot from previous people's integrations within GE, mistakes and their successes. So we avoided the mistakes and piled up on the successes. Is two areas that you need to focus on: your employees and your customers. That's your first 90 days. And employees is, am I going to get paid right? Because we have paid wrong when integration happens, and you can't mess with people's paycheck. That needs to be right. So we wanted to make sure that was right. And so we were actually doing some trial runs before the acquisition, and GE Corporate said that we don't do these tests until after acquisition. Well, I said, you're going to do it this time. And we did it because we had to actually deliver paychecks to thousands of people within a week of integration. And I stood up in a town hall and I said, if any one of you have issues with paycheck, this is my cell phone number. And all the paychecks were right except for one, and we fixed it with FedEx, and it was good. The second thing was, employees, when this is excitement about this acquisition and they want to start talking with people, they want to start mingling. So there's excitement in the beginning, and they need to be connected. And if your two systems don't talk to each other, they can't even see their calendars. They can't send emails. It was like sending to outside system. So do your best to kind of integrate those systems as fast as possible. And the third is go-to-market strategy. It changes when you buy, you do acquisition. Customers are expecting changes. So you need to have the right strategy, so you start talking to them about how you're going to service them differently. Is the price going to drop, or is the price going to go up, or what new services are you going to offer? Are they going to expand globally? Are there going to be new products and things like that? Then you have to actually do the next 3 months should be finance, operations, engineering, R&D, and all that. And I feel like it has to be in that order. If you piss off your employees or customers, you're in big shit. And you can have the best BD model and everything. You lose people and you lose customers. And so that, to me, was one of the best examples from the perspective of the customers and the employees. We didn't lose a single person.
Nice.
Awesome. There's a theme I'm hearing. Well, first, the customers and the employees obviously pay attention to first. The other thing that Lisa and Pamela were talking about is the idea of transparency, being really clear. If you know something is staying and something is going, to be really clear about that. What about the areas that are gray and you don't know yet if they're staying or going? What should you say if you're trying to be transparent?
I think what Pamela, the example she gave earlier, was really helpful in that things change. So even if you were to say, the plan is that we're going to do this, it can always change. These are the things, like major market shifts and maybe another acquisition that's in the pipeline that we don't know about, maybe a divestiture of one of our business units, maybe a big macro event. These things can always change, but plan of record is X today.
And it could change. It probably will change, but we're going to tell you all along the way.
We're going to tell you everything that we know.
Okay.
And then sometimes a founder, for example, might be pressing for some guarantees, like, will you take care of my key team? And so just being very, very honest of what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to and why.
Okay. Fabulous. All right. Let's get a little bit more into the culture, leadership approaches conversation for the acquired and the acquiree. So we've talked a lot about this in some phone calls. And Sangeeta, I want to pose this one for you. Why is it so important? Let's talk about just the leadership styles, the leadership approaches, and the culture. Why is it so important to do that in due diligence to assess both sides?
I think some of the topics came up where you're going to get rid of some things, you're going to keep something. Similarly, if you haven't done enough due diligence already and you don't know which technology you're going to keep, what processes you're going to keep, or whatever the products and services you're going to keep, and you're doing that due diligence or evaluation after the acquisition and you're doing it now, each of the company is going to, and this is just human behavior, that what I did or my invention is better than yours. And they'll find 1,000 reasons to tell you why theirs is better. And so you have two parties who are saying mine is better and this one is saying mine is better. So sometimes it's actually better to have a third party come in and look at it from an unbiased way. And then trying to figure out how to prioritize some of those things. How to prioritize and then have a leader. Because some people will still continue to have grudges that you didn't take my platform or you didn't take my approach. I thought it was the best approach. You have to take a step back and think about what is. I mean, we talk about best practices all the time. And you may have best practices in your backyard through acquisition, and you're not looking at that because it's acquisition. You should be actually picking it up. And in fact, if you pick up some of the processes and some of the technology from the company you acquired, it makes them feel awesome. And then the second thing is, some leaders will be grumpy that their stuff didn't get used or is going to get retired, whatever. This is where the executive leadership role becomes critical. And they have to say, we listened to you, we considered everything in a very unbiased fashion. This is the decision we are going to make. This is the time to disagree and commit. And if there are any concerns, let's put it all on the table and get it done. Once we are done with this meeting, we're all aligned. And that is where a lot of people make the mistake. They assume that people at the lower level can fix this and they will never have to do anything. In many cases, it's the CEO who has to tell their leaders. That is their expectations. So I'm going to inspire you to help take the company to the next level, but I'm also going to share expectations with you that I expect you to deliver this. And we are going to do a performance evaluation in 6 months. And it's not going to be the same old, same old. Yeah, the first month will be a honeymoon period where we are going to treat acquisition as customers or whatever. But then you're the same team and we got to get to the business and get things done. The longer you wait for any integration projects, the worse it gets. It becomes impossible to integrate 3 years later or 2 years later.
Great. I'd love to hear stories on this topic of, and we've called it false pride in some other panels we've done. They called it false pride, where leaders, maybe of the acquired company, think my stuff is so great. How dare you say you're going to shelve it or retire it? What do you do when you have those conflicts in approaches or the culture, but you have stuff like that? What's your best strategy? Lisa or Pamela, what would you say?
I was just thinking of the example of fairly recent one where all the acquired companies, the experience was at the bottom because you had all these founders who had, most of them had corporate careers before, and then they got entrepreneurial and they built up a $10, $20 million business and sold it to private equity. All of that experience sat at the bottom, and then at the top was a bunch of PE, like an associate from a PE firm, and then like 2 people who had never run anything. And so when you get into that kind of situation, I think that transition of knowledge from the bottom to the top and that relationship is really important, because you need to either pick somebody from down there who's not going to run off into the sunset and is going to step up into that, or you need to find that level of experience at the top who knows what they're doing. And if you lack that, there's this big gap. And what, in my experience, those people all were like, I don't really need this. Like, I'm going to go off into the sunset early. I don't care if I have to sacrifice like a year of my earnout or whatever. This is not my jam. Yep. And so then left behind are sort of the lieutenants, such as myself, who also have experience to get kind of sucked up into the abyss of, gap of knowledge. And that also isn't great because it's very reactive, right? You're reacting to something bad that's happened versus cultivating something good. And each of those companies have built their individual cultures. I could have gone through all 14 at the time. It's probably now 20 now, and said, okay, these people is full of sacred cows. This one, super egalitarian. This one, cutthroat. This one, street fighters. This one, you can pretty much see it, right? And as a leadership team, being able to identify those things and figure out how you're going to get those things to come together and what your culture actually is, so those people who aren't a part of it can self-select out, is important to do, because otherwise you just have this mishmash of people who are bouncing into each other and are frustrated and just, not producing. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just my observation of when you have these multiple cultures and differentiation in levels of experience, and you've got a platform and you've got all these integrations going on, you really have to get those things as right as possible. And it's a very high degree of difficulty. So don't fault any of those folks up there who didn't have the experience. They didn't have the experience. So that's what you get, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like your strategy is identify very clearly the differences in leadership approaches or cultures.
Yeah.
And then deliberately work through it.
Yeah.
Not avoid it or.
Yeah.
Sounds like, okay. Pamela, anything to add?
Well, I love that when you said false pride, because I would say it's not false. I mean,
right. Real pride.
It's actual pride, and rightfully so. Like, you've achieved something, you put your heart and mind. Like, I remember interviewing startup founders for my dissertation, and one of my favorite stories was one of the founders, very, very successful now, has exited, and he said, you vacillate in a single day, where you're literally fantasizing about what color your Learjet's going to be. And then in the same, within hours, saying, when my partner leaves me because I'm an epic failure, which of my friends' couch can I actually sleep on? And he said, and that's all before lunchtime. So there is this sense of perseverance, and you have to make the impossible possible in your mind repeatedly. This is a psychological experience. And then if you get acquired, it's not false pride, it's pride.
It's pride.
And so when you underestimate human systems and the messiness of identity and the low capability on communication, you have just a bunch of people trying to preserve the way they wish to be viewed and the way they wish to view themselves, their self-esteem, having conversations. And egos don't make good decisions. Yeah. So the more you can put that aside and say, let's have a real conversation. This is going to be hard. And I have deep compassion for that hero's journey to normalize that, especially the dip.
Yeah.
And then, you were mentioning like somebody being willing, this is not my jam, and the buyout.
Yeah.
Not everybody that's acquired is going through the buyout.
Right.
So somebody just won the lottery-ish,
Yeah.
they're going to have to work hard. And there's a lot of people that came with them watching the lottery ticket, flapping in the wind, and they're saying, but I was
Where's my?
I was here.
Where's my lottery ticket?
I was believing in you, and so how do I make sense of that?
Yeah. I think this is the most underrated, underappreciated, under-talked about part of the integrations is what we're talking about now. I want to pause for a moment. I have a lot more questions, but I want to make sure we get your questions. Anything so far? Yes, Jody.
When I was at Getty, we acquired a large company, and the founder had a tattoo for that company. So he got a Getty tattoo, and then later had to have that removed. At what point do you think you should have
Yeah. So
Love
good.
that.
So good. So good.
So you don't have to.
But
I think you keep the tattoo.
But I think it does represent the changes that we talked about. Like things change. So like just when you think things are permanent or that you're fully dedicated, it's not this, it's this. This is why we were talking that I'm kind of excited about this particular inflection point in our history, because I got excited from a leadership development and culture standpoint, is that in that high velocity growth period, very few people, key employees included, were brushing up against the edge of their capabilities. Product was falling off the shelves, we were just growing and people were investing. I'm kind of excited about the level set.
Yeah.
Like I know it's not fun. I know that the market's been challenging, but boy, is it a wake-up call for what's real. And I think that the conversations and acquisitions today are cleaner. There's better due diligence. It's just not just acquiring. It's like we're making better choices. I'm seeing people make better choices.
Buyer's market or a seller's market today?
Right now?
Yeah.
It's a buyer's
Buyer's
market.
Buyer's
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
So you talked about integration, and you said it's never too early to start integrating. Is there any time you realize, let's pause? If we're going too fast, I'm going to hurt the process and the people and the culture while doing this. Let's pause and figure a few things out. Has that ever happened?
It certainly happened on my side.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can think of probably at least 3 or 4 times in my very long career where there was a plan to integrate within, let's call it 6 to 10 months. And we got like 2 or 3 months in and said, you're just going to operate independently. We can't, whatever you're doing is working. And what we're getting from you being integrated isn't accretive enough to the business. You don't have a need for these platform services. And we're got some stuff going on over here. So you just go over there and you keep doing your thing. And generally it's because they're doing better than the rest of the Borg ship over here is starving and these people are doing great. So like, why should we break something else? So that's usually why that comes up.
And I've seen it done similarly where there's a hybrid to that, where you have a small piece of either 2 pieces of technology. They're going to be in a small sort of Encompass protected team that will start the conversation of integration while letting them operate independently.
Yeah, I think it's either in a situation where the acquisition is actually doing financially better and growing better and things like that, or it is the business development model wasn't really good. So when you actually got into the integration, you realize it's not what the BD people said. And then you got to stop and say there is really not as much synergy as we thought there was.
That's exactly right. It's the cross sell. We want you to cross sell.
Yeah.
And they start to cross sell and then the original revenue starts to go and the cross sell revenue isn't closing. And it's like, okay, go back and keep doing that. Just
sell you. Just sell
right?
You.
Yeah.
So we had to that point, there was a situation where we acquired a company, a smaller company, had a much better approach and culture. They would be, when you talk about culture, they would red roll, all that stuff in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Hours, start up doing amazing things, and we were a bigger company. We didn't have that culture. I didn't want that culture to go to them, I wanted their culture to come to us.
Yeah.
And that's what we paused and said, let's them before we integrate.
Just watch them for a while and then figure out how you can do that on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are times when, as you said,
Mhm.
call and say, let's figure it out before we destroy
Yeah.
them and lose the value.
Yeah,
That's a great example.
that is a
Yeah.
good example.
Yeah. Was there something
I've
else?
been in such a situation where the acquired company's culture was the more desired culture.
Yeah.
And it was very awkward for the acquirer.
Yeah.
We're buying you. And we've
Right.
no way of doing things.
Mhm.
But, the CEO realized that he was buying the culture too.
Yes.
Ah.
And that kind of permeated through.
So did they pause a little bit on the integration, or did they work deliberately on?
They went right ahead.
Okay.
What they had was the person who was going to own the post-integration business was separate from the integration manager, but they both embodied the desired culture.
Oh, okay.
And that's what goes
Oh,
Yeah.
fascinating. Great example.
Another way you can make that happen, to your point, and it did happen in one of my early examples, where you had a $500 million company merging with a $2.2 billion company, but I was on the $500 million side, and we had the growth and the culture and all of that, and this was sort of not so great. We basically just took over, right? Even though if you looked on paper, it wasn't a merger of equals. It was more like they acquired us, but I was the COO, our CEO was the CEO, the CFO. I mean, our entire executive team ran the company. And that was the path to get that culture to permeate this now $3 billion company.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing that
Mhm.
The reverse integration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's integration.
Yeah.
It's a real integration. You got to pick the right stuff from right company.
All right. Earlier, one of you mentioned earnouts.
Oh, yeah, it was probably me.
So I want to dive into that a little bit, because I think it was you, Lisa, who said earnouts are a dangerous tool.
Yeah, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with earnouts because I was the beneficiary of a very hearty earnout and hit the earnout. But here's the challenge. And for those of you who don't know, let's take a simple example. You sell your company, you're making $2 million in EBITDA, your acquiring company says they're going to pay you a multiple of 10. So they're going to give you $20 million, but they're going to hold back $4 million of that. So they're essentially going to give you a multiple of 8. I think that math is right. Maybe not, but they're going to give you a lower multiple, but you can achieve that 10 multiple if you deliver on these objectives, financial objectives over the next 2 years. And then they're going to pay that out and it translates to your 10. The challenge with an earnout is it's based on the performance of your entity that you're bringing to the table. And so you've got this P&L, and yet you're expected to bring all this accretive value to the mothership. And so you're supposed to be cross-selling and doing all this stuff and bringing, the whole boat up, which is very distracting to essentially your core business. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you could lose some revenue here, but the idea is you get 3x over here. You end up with this crazy earnout math where there's a lot of efficiency loss and stress caused by doing earnout math. Like, well, this is our revenue because we sold this thing, but I also cross-sold this other thing. But it wasn't in our earnout because it's not in our P&L, but it's in the whole company's P&L. So how do we account for that? So you end up with the entire finance department doing like 14 sets of books to track the actual P&L of the entity, the whole entity, and then what the P&L looks like for earnout purposes. So you're paying all these people and using all this time, and there's 14,000 meetings to discuss whether this is or isn't in the earnout. And that just that costs your company money. That just is so distracting. So if you're going to do an earnout, I love the concept, but I think that there is probably a market, and maybe there's a tool out there that does this, to actually tighten that so it's really clear what's in and out, and you don't throw it on some poor FP&A person in finance to have their spreadsheet of where you are against your earnout. Because I've never seen it done well, and I'm sure there are companies that do it well, but it creates this tension that's not actually really healthy, and is frankly counter the whole point of the company being bought. So there's probably a better way to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on earnouts.
I agree. And I've seen it disincentivize like integration, the
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
integration that you're trying to do, like cross-selling or being better, even the customers that benefit from this integration, you've got a team that are saying, no,
Yeah.
let's not talk
Mhm.
about what else we can do in the company. Let's just sell what we sell.
Exactly.
Because we win from that.
We were talking to a CFO about a month ago, and he was saying at least 5 times he's told to people, we'll pay your earnout, forget about it, don't worry about it, we're not going to track it, we're just going to pay you. Now let's integrate.
Yeah.
So they kind of,
So what was the point?
I
right?
know.
Exactly.
I know.
Just pay them their 10x multiple and forget it.
Yeah.
That's what
Or
he's,
come up with some other way to
Right.
make sure that the original business doesn't fall
Right.
apart.
well, that's kind of where they ended up. Just pay it because it's not helping the integration. We're not reaping the benefits that we
Yeah.
thought we would. So fascinating stuff. Okay. All right. Let's go to resourcing. So Pamela, for you, we've talked a little bit about the integration team and resourcing. Tell us more about what you really need to do in terms of resourcing.
Say more what you mean by resourcing.
Resourcing the integration, an integration team. What's important about that?
I think it depends on the size of the acquisition. So I
Okay.
think that there's a level of complexity that correlates with the level of complexity of the acquisition. So
Mm,
I would say it depends.
okay.
Whether it's going to be a dedicated team, like you said, more senior people that are accustomed to doing this, and they've got great lieutenants underneath them, and they can, apply their experience and expertise to that integration.
Mhm.
I think one of the things, at least in my world, I think you are doing a lot more of the operations and
Mhm.
their various functions. I think it's rare that people are assigned an executive coach, or that the top team is having somebody sit with them for that
Yeah.
integration conversation to make sure that the undiscussables are being surfaced,
Mm.
that the elephants in the room are being walked up to and petted and maybe kissed gently on the cheek, and that you're looking around corners together and say, let me provide a set of skills to have a much more difficult conversation and to preview some things that might happen, and to talk about how you're going to deal with it. What's the process with which, when we hit a point of break, when we hit a disagreement, what are we going to do? Who's going to be in the room? How are we going to address it, instead of just addressing it every time it happens? So
Mhm.
I think from a cultural and leadership point, just general support and skill set to have much more difficult, transparent conversations, and to anticipate the breaking points and the obstacles to get ahead of them.
And how important is it for that third party to be involved then? Is that a critical component for the executives to have that third party to have those conversations?
I've not seen it done really well without
Without.
support.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add on resourcing, Sangeeta
I
or
just
Lisa?
think you have to be a certain size. It's kind of what Pamela was
Okay.
saying. Like, if you're a big company and you have lots of resources and people who've done these things, you could probably piece together a pretty good core team.
Yep.
But and maybe, you really need a playbook, and you need a set of tools, and there's a bazillion of them out there, and maybe you need a single consultant to come in and say, hey, yeah, do you have the right team? Do they have the right infrastructure around them? Yes or no? And then they can go on their merry way, and you can leverage their tools, and then just little check-ins. You probably don't need a lot.
Okay.
And we didn't at the larger size, but I can tell you at the smaller size, it is the worst idea ever to say, oh, my COO has done this before. Yay. Then you pull your only person out, or you suck people out of key roles, and then they are bumping into each other, and then you're hodgepodging something together, maybe with people from the other company, which is a hideous idea, because there's this tension between the company you're acquiring and the company, and then you've got this human dynamic where there's these weird power struggles that, you just don't need to do that. Like, figure out who the team is, make sure there's a really strong leader in there,
Mhm.
and take help if you need it. And if you're smaller, if you're sub 200 million, particularly sub 100 million, you're going to need some help.
Yeah.
And especially if the acquisition is a significant size. If it's a tuck-in, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if it's like half of your size or more, that's when you really start
Yeah,
to
that
need to
outside
lead
help.
some
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
Okay.
I think because integration becomes on top of their regular job. So they have to do the regular job. And doing integration of that size is a job. And so they have a hard time. And that's when they should leverage the third party.
Mhm.
Okay. Lots of other topics I want to get into. Operations. So again, in my experience, which is nothing like yours, but I think just the operations part of it is often overlooked or not paid enough attention to, just like the culture, just like the leadership approaches. So Lisa, you have a lot of background in the operational parts of integrations. Talk to us a little bit about those and why it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, my background leans heavily on manufacturing, hardware technology, splash of software, but sort of technology manufacturing and microelectronics manufacturing. So when I think about operations and acquisitions, I'm looking at things like supply chain. I'm looking at things like, the procurement organization as being key. I'm looking at things like your MRP system, which is now ERP, right? Very heavy sort of what is your sort of order to cash cycle look like, and who are all the people that are in that process? And I think that a lot of times in due diligence, those things, they're not walking the floor necessarily. And you really need to walk the floor to really get a sense for where the operational gaps are. And you can intuit that. And it just excavates questions that create further inquiry and diligence. And so I think that piece of it, people tend to heavily rely on what the financials say. Sorry to all my financial friends in here, but like, you can't look at a P&L and a balance sheet and understand, like, are all these fixed assets like really here, or like what are they're depreciated how much and where are they? You have to get out there and ask the questions. And so having people on the diligence team who come from industry and aren't necessarily just the consultants, right, who've never run anything, it puts those consultants in a terrible position, and it puts the investment bank in a bad position. It puts everyone in a bad position. Put somebody out there who's actually run something and have them just bring back data that causes you maybe to look over at this puff of smoke. And I see that fails also. And I do think of it as an operational element, sort of the HR diligence, right? That is I never see that in there. And there are people, very capable people who have those products, who will come in and say, don't necessarily listen just to what the founder's telling you about who's actually good or where the revenue is coming from or who's doing what, because they have a vested interest in closing this deal. Yeah. You need other independent opinions about where the business is coming from and who is running the operation and where your key talent, where is the actual talent. And without that line of inquiry from people who know, and that's their specialty, you'll miss that, and you may under incentivize somebody through the integration process and find out that you have a key person over here who only got like a 2% stake in the business. Not that that's a real example, but I'm just saying who's like really critical to the business. And that is an operational issue that will manifest itself as you integrate, and that person bails.
Oh, yeah.
So walk the floor.
Walk the floor.
Walk the floor.
Yeah.
And would you say that you're going to focus on the core value streams, the core competencies first, I'm guessing? Like you were saying, manufacturing. I got to go walk the manufacturing floor. Right. I got to see where the assets are.
Yeah. So I was the CEO of a marketing services business that actually started out as a technology platform. And I was brought in to be the CEO and figure out if it could make money on behalf of the PE firm. And after like a week, I was like, no, that is not a piece of software. That's like an Excel spreadsheet. Anybody could do it. Shut that off. You have a marketing agency. And so that in mind, with a services business like that, you go straight to the clients. Yeah. You go straight to Procter & Gamble, Starbucks, who were all the key clients that they had. And I went in and talked to them and was like, well, what's the value this company is bringing to you? And then you find out where the actual, the actual value is that you can take to market. That's what's left of this business.
Anything else?
Fascinating.
Ladies, on that one?
One other thing that I wanted to add was the retention bonuses that are a very standard thing when integration happens. And it's mostly the company that's getting acquired is the one who's going to recommend, hey, these are the 10 people who need to get retention bonuses. And if you have not done your due diligence well, you will realize very quickly that half of those people should have never gotten the retention bonus. bonus. In fact, they should be on a hit list rather than
It's
on
usually
a
the
retention.
founder's, brother-in-law or
Friends,
whatever that
friends.
has been there forever.
Yeah,
right?
and that is and they not only have a retention bonus, now you need to keep them for additional 6 months when you really don't want them. They
That's
are
so true.
actually hurdle to the progress of integration because they've done things certain way and they don't want to change, and it was done poorly. So
That's so true.
yeah.
Any other questions?
There's a flip
Yes.
side to that.
Mhm.
And I totally agree with you. There's a lot of people who should never have gotten those retention bonuses. On the other hand, there's a lot of tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
These are people who are just working in the dungeon, doing their stuff. And those are the hidden gems that need to be unearthed early on.
Yep.
So that
We should give them a retention bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you're
That's what
exactly
he's saying,
right.
yeah.
And to Lisa's
Yes.
point earlier, it's like you have to go find them.
Yeah.
You can't just take the founders.
there's there's no substitute for working.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Find all kinds of hidden offsite warehouses.
Mhm.
I have a question, Sangeeta. You talked earlier about disagree, commit, and I think that's a great Amazon leadership principle.
And I love it.
And
Love
I
the
love
best.
it too, and I wish post acquisition we could rely on disagree and commit. So, because what I see, especially if you've got the retention bonus, I see the saboteurs, right? And so how have you worked with the executive team to move in that direction? Because I think if everyone can get on board with that principle, we can go faster. The culture, integrating systems, and focus on revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And often it doesn't happen.
right. Disagree and commit is a tough principle to actually execute on. And I'm sure you have a lot of examples. But Dana, you probably have a lot of real examples of people who have done disagree and commit on our platform,
Yes.
where it was tough, even at the lower levels, you got to do that. I think this is where each one of the leaders at the top level has to walk the talk of disagree and commit. That everybody's married to certain ideas, they're passionate about certain things. And once the facts are presented, it is very clear that this idea should win over this idea. And if you are a scientific, analytical person, you should accept it and move on. And it's a tough thing to do. But it is probably the best way to address it is with facts and data. And it has to be a clear edict after that. Whoever is the leader, it doesn't have to be a CEO every time. Whoever is leading that will have to say, we are disagreeing and committing to this. We cannot come back and address this issue again because we have addressed all your concern and this is what we've decided.
Well, I think so much of the disagree and commit is the emphasis is on the commit part.
Yeah.
But I find that
Yeah,
actually
me
it's
too.
the disagree part.
Yeah.
So if
I
there's
do
a
too.
lack of commit, it's often that it has been unskillfully
Yeah.
disagreed. Like that all of the underlying concerns have not been properly voiced or heard. It's not been acknowledged. We haven't done a good job of talking about the trade-offs and say we do agree that these are the trade-offs, that there's a risk of X, Y, and Z. That when you're not getting the commitment that you need, look back on how well you're creating the forums for the disagree part, because that's the critical piece. Those tough conversations where you put everything on the table. Here are my concerns.
Yeah.
Are we aligned on those risks and trade-offs?
Go ahead,
Sometimes it's
Diane.
the leaders who don't recognize that the other people have committed
Yeah.
and they can't get beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't accept it.
Yeah.
So sometimes the leaders.
Sometimes the leader's in the way. Yeah. Yeah.
Couple in the back. Oh, three. Yes.
So just a comment about securing that commitment and getting the data in terms of turning qualitative into quantitative and finding the hidden gems in the basement. We ended up bringing in Rob Cross, who's been published in the Harvard Business Review, and he did a lot of work on knowledge network analysis and allowed us to uncover those hidden gems and who were the true experts, where was that expertise. because the leaders didn't necessarily know who those irreplaceable gems were. So that was just something that we employed is raw process analysis.
That came out
Cool.
a lot in my research as well, of the unscalable heroes, those critical culture carriers that were there from the beginning. If you're not attending to their transition, if there's an acquisition, they can become incredible pulls on the culture and not in a good way because they're so influential. So the OGs, the people that are being taken care of, if they become unhappy and you haven't attended to their responsibility as a culture carrier through the integration, you've got the loudest voice in the room, not in favor of what you're doing.
Yeah. When the disagreement happens, the leader who's facilitating or leading that conversation has to acknowledge it and actually hear it properly and address any concerns they have. And what I've heard many times is people who have disagreed, they've come back and they've said, I wanted you to understand and hear me out. And I'm okay with the decision, but I wanted to be heard. That was one of the things, because they feel like they're expert at this and their opinion doesn't matter. But once they understand why you make the decision, it's fine. But they wanted to be heard. And it's still a tough task. I have seen literally a ship coming to the dock and suddenly turns. And that's because of a senior leader who says, I'm not really sure I want to take this to the customer. And suddenly your product and tech team has been working for years to get that out. And the sales guy leader is saying, I'm not going to take it to the customer. Yeah. What do you do? And so you need to work it ahead of time before something like that happens.
I want to add to something that Pamela said earlier, because I totally agree. It's the disagreement phase that's critical.
You do well, then it becomes easier.
And we study a lot of neuroscience at Gotara, and neuroscientists say, as human beings, we are more emotional than logical. Even if we think we're going to be all data-based and logical, we are not. And so I think in the disagreement phase, what I've learned is, yes, the facts and the data, but you also got to get the feelings out. Otherwise, you're not covering the full spectrum of the human experience.
Just a quick question. Where is your stepping off point? You've gone through the M&A and you can stick with the company for a long time as they go through their struggles, but where is it you say, this is good enough and people have it from here?
Good question. How do you know that?
How do you know when it's integrated?
Or when
integrated enough.
Or when you can step away and they can handle the rest on their own? How do you know?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think through at what point did we feel done? And I would say first of all, when the screaming stops is a real good metric. Once your business systems, your sort of order to cash process is seamless, like you can go from processing a contract to collecting the cash for that contract without a major hiccup or confusion, I would say you're probably done. Because people who are demotivated or don't agree with it or who are confused can't do that.
Yeah.
So when you walk the floor, I love that concept, by the way. When you walk the floor, who would be the three most important individuals to seek out?
The person who's been there the longest, I would say, the old lady who's got like a hairnet on, who's over there packing something, who's got all the institutional knowledge, but keep going.
Okay, and that's one person. And then what 3 questions would you want to ask?
Okay, so the second person is not the guy that's giving you the tour because he's been primed. So it's the lady that's like kind of quiet, who you can maybe ask a few questions that they say, oh, this is Lita. She's been here for 30 years. And then you kind of get her later and come up and ask her a few questions about how the machines are working. Or the second one would be the people on the shipping dock. Those people know everything because they see like quality, things that are coming back, all that kind of thing, right? And I would say the third person is not even on the floor. They're up behind a glass on one floor up and they're in quality. And they're the ones that are like inspecting stuff and dealing with all the supplier stuff. And, you know, they're punching like holes. And I remember talking to this gal in quality. This was a company in Queens, New York that made mint scented trash bags to repel rats. And they were selling them to Walmart and Target. And I walked the floor and I'm like, this thing is perfect. This floor is excellent. But then I go up and talk to the gal in quality and she's punching like holes in these bags and stuff. There's all these bags all over the floor. And she's like, oh my God, that last lot was shit. I'm like, okay, so now we've got something, right? So it's those people. And you really have to have somebody who's done that, like to know to look for that stuff. So those are the people you want on your team who will do that and say, I don't know the answer, but here's the puffs of smoke I saw. I mean, shoot, I sent Feroz out to a place recently and I was like, I don't think it's a good client for us, but go out there anyway. And, you know, he went out and looked and he reached the same conclusion I did. And I didn't even walk the floor. I just talked to the guy, but I need somebody to walk the floor who's walked some floors. And I don't think we would have taken that business. I don't think it was a healthy piece of business to get because the leader wasn't going to change. So it's that sort of thing.
In the tech world, the functions are not always skilled at talking to one another. So you need to have representation from the go-to-market team, from the engineering team, because they're not always talking. And in certain stages of growth, that's completely normal. One of the groups that I love talking to are the EAs, the executive assistants. Like I just like to take them out for lunch or better yet drinks because they tell me more.
Yeah,
like
so good, Pamela.
They know everything. Yeah. They know who's who in the zoo. They know
they
who's doing
the dynamics
well. Like
of the people,
the dynamics. Like if I were, joining this company, what would I need to know? Like what's going on? What are some of the tiffs? Like where does it get really hard? They know and see everything, and then you get the representation across.
So good.
Great suggestion.
I think in an organization, when I started a new role, every time I would actually, when I would quote unquote walk the floors, I would always pick 3 different levels of people to talk to. The lowest level, in the middle, and the top, because what you're hearing from the top is massaged, polished information. You get the real stuff from the middle and the bottom. And I would always get a different story, and that was the real story, not the story that the direct report of yours is telling you. And that actually helps you get grounded in what needs to happen, where the gaps might be, the reality. And some of the leaders don't like it that you go into their organization at different levels, but that is what you have to do, whether you're going to your customers, clients, or your own organization.
All right, I'm going to end with a final question, a really important one, and then we'll field more questions as you have them. So we're talking a lot about the employees, and my question is on employee engagement through the integration. How do you keep morale up? How do you keep momentum going? How do you prevent unwanted attrition?
Well, we had a situation where all these bonuses were promised to like this one group, and there was this massive mutiny forming, and I was new and just given this particular acquisition, and the person who was running that team was let go. And I found that actually the town hall coupled with one-on-ones, like offer it wasn't an uncanny amount of people. It was like 30 people. So it was enough to where I could do like a town hall and do sort of this hat in hands thing, which was like, I know you guys were promised some things. You guys are probably really pissed off, and just like, let's let them sort of get it out and yell at you in front of their friends and all that. None of them did that, but just, come as a human being and say, hey, I think we perhaps screwed this up. None of those people had heard from anyone. So that was a mistake out of the gate. They probably should have had more town halls with them about, hey, you're this new company and you're coming in, and here's who I am and here's who the team is, and we're not going to do everything right. And, the second thing is sort of offer the one-on-ones. I think of those 30 people, at least 22, 23 of them did it. You make that time. You give them their 20 to 30 minutes and you let them talk to you, because that will absolutely change the dynamic, because they just have an audience, right? Yeah. They have someone that they can talk to that actually didn't try and, snow them, that just said that, hey, we're really sorry and we can't solve this problem. And guess what? We're not going to pay your bonus. We just can't. We can't do it. this is what happened, boom.
Yeah.
And, you know, that just diffuses it and at least has them feel like there's somebody that actually listened to me and at least heard what I had to say. And that just, the nature of that will temper things.
Yeah.
I agree completely. And it may even seem like it's unscalable to do one-on-ones, but when you're talking to one, you're talking to many because they talk to each other. Number one. Number two, I think the goal of keeping morale high is that's the misassumption.
Okay.
Like I would rather say, let me normalize that your morale is going to be up and down through this process. And here are the things we're going to put in place to help you navigate that. But you're going to wake up some mornings and say, what's going on and where do I fit? And you're going to wake up some mornings super excited about this possibility, opportunity that opens. And that's could be on the same day. So
And perfectly
let's
normal.
normalize
So
that it's a hero's journey, that
Nice.
it's going to be hard. It won't always be high instead of rah, we're awesome. And this is going to be awesome. Normalize it and then put things in place to support the transition.
Yeah, I think for integrations are always tough because people are just anxious. They don't know what's going to happen. In fact, on both sides, because you're going to eliminate some jobs as they come through, and it could be from even the acquirer side. So I think the first job for all leaders in the company is to inspire the teams by sharing with them why it is that they're buying the company. How does it change the future of the company? And how does it change anything for them? What's in it for them? I think eventually it comes down to the individuals. Like, what could they do? What part could they play? And then keep them, as you said earlier, keep them up to date on the plan, because the plan is all you got. As a leader, we don't have anything more than that. And be as transparent as possible. So I think communication is the key, which is a lot of integrations miss, and people start leaving as a result.
There's danger in white space. Okay, so if there's white space created where an individual or group of people think, I don't know what's going on, you're better to tell them that you don't know what's going on either than to leave that white space, because they will fill it in. They are firing me on all of us. And it's much more comforting to feel like you're all in this together and there's no big plot. And people tend to overestimate the level of calculation that's going on up in the C-suite. They're calculating up there. And they've got this plan that they're not sharing with us. And 99% of the time, the plan isn't even done.
Like I literally heard that today. I literally heard it today from a group that they're like, they've got all these plans and they're going to just close out this whole division. And it was like, no.
They don't have a plan.
They're still figuring it out.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. Lisa, Sangeeta, Pamela.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful conversation. And thank you for your questions. And we'll be here for a little while. So thank you all.
That was fun.